Ravindra, Admiral Lamba, members of the research faculty of the NMF, members of the research support faculty of the NMF, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished scientists and engineers and members of the strategic community, all of whom are joining us virtually today in through the ether, as they say. It is a particularly proud moment for us in the National Maritime Foundation to be able to welcome a luminary of the eminence of Dr. Rasik Ravindra, who actually bears very little introduction because his fame has sped before him for so many decades now that the polar regions and Dr. Ravindra are pretty much synonymous in most Indian circles that deal with or have dealt with India's polar endeavors in general and its Antarctic endeavors in particular. So I think that this is particularly a particularly timely lecture that we are going to listen to, presentation that he's going to make on a number of counts. As Satyam has already said, we are currently in a new stage of government public policy debate on the draft Arctic policy, and there are many views on this draft. Some are more flattering than others, but it's clear that this endeavor of the government of putting out its policy for comment by the public is undeniably the right thing to do, and it is bound to make for a better, more informed policy. Now, we must appreciate that government policies in all areas have both a classified component and a public component. And one must not forget that some of the areas that the public might point out are actually embedded, but in the classified version. Nevertheless, the Arctic policy, I would have thought, is a subset of what should have been a polar policy. And towards that end, once again, I think that we are particularly blessed by the fact that Dr. Ravindra is in our midst. The second area, of course, which is of equal, if not greater importance, is the impact of climate change and the huge potential that the ice sheets of Greenland at one extremity and of the Antarctic at the other extremity of the Earth are likely to have. So we are not sure, nobody is particularly sure as to what the speed of deterioration of the Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheets are. But it is worrying. While the world's attention seems to be focused upon geopolitical and geoeconomic fallouts of the Arctic becoming less ice-bound, I won't use the word ice-free, but less ice-bound than earlier, I think that the real challenge will lie in our ability to understand what is happening at the Antarctic. And also, I think that sea level rise, which might accrue as a result of these climate events, has not just one type of impact upon some of the more vulnerable SIDS countries such as the Maldives, but also on major countries such as India. So I think that with our density of the coastal population being what it is, this area is of great interest. And one third point. When I used to indicate that Antarctica is a major maritime interest of India, people used to ask me why. And I did want to emphasize, and I have continued to do that in the past, that Antarctica is a major maritime interest of India, not only because Antarctica holds the largest potential of untapped mineral resources or even resources by way of crude oil, and not even because Antarctica holds the world's largest reservoir of nutrition by way of krill. But Antarctica is an immediate major maritime interest of India because measurements in Antarctica, understanding the Antarctic continent, and increasingly the Arctic as well, allow us to predict with greater and greater certainty the Indian monsoon. And since India is still heavily dependent upon agriculture for its economy, when we get the monsoon right, we get our agriculture right. When we get our agriculture right, we get our economy right. And when we get our economy right, then we are a power to reckon with. And finally, the Antarctic and the polar regions have the salutary effect of spurring scientific endeavor. And science, for its own sake, pure science, is crucial for it to find application in applied sciences. Whether these applied sciences thereafter proceed into engineering and the applied forms of engineering, which is technology, or not, they have value across the entire scientific spectrum. And by that, I do not limit myself to the physical sciences alone, but encompass within this the social sciences, which are equally important when we are dealing with regions that have such massive impact, both potential and current, upon the Earth. So the life sciences, the physical sciences, the social sciences, all have their roots in many cases, and certainly their applications in many other cases in the polar regions. So I think that we couldn't have asked for a more eminent lecture for our Eminent Persons lecture series than Dr. Rasik Ravindra. And as I had mentioned earlier, we have 3 or 4 of the NMF's own members of the NMF's own research faculty who have had some experience in different capacities in Antarctica. My executive director, Captain Sarabjit Parmar, who is a serving naval officer and a Sea King helicopter pilot, has served there, as indeed has Commandant Manoranjan Srivastava. And I myself have had some marginal experiences in that area. But all of our experiences pale into pretty much insignificance when we compare them with the experience of Dr. Ravindra, both in terms of formulating, planning, and executing India's polar endeavors. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcoming every one of our distinguished audience from both near and far, I would like to thank you for joining us and now hand over the proceedings back to Satyam. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for those remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Dr. Rasik Ravindra to deliver his presentation. And I would want to put some admin instruction prior to that. I would request you all to please keep your questions in the chat box. We have dedicated some 15 minutes towards the end after 1 hour so that we can take some of your questions. I would encourage you to participate. However, I would also request you to keep your personal comments and personal chats to each other. There is an option of chatting personally, so you can use that. And Dr. Ravindra, you have an hour to yourself so I request you to please share your presentation, sir.
Thank you, Satyam. And thank you, Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhanji, for your kind words. I am honored by the presence of Admiral Lambaji, Vice Admiral Muralidharan, Dr. Raghava, and it's a surprise to me that our leaders from Bharati Station, they are also live and they are watching these proceedings. The Bharati Station is now fully equipped with the Wi-Fi systems and satellites, so it's a pleasure to see the leader of the Bharati Station, Dr. Devadeep Chakravarti, online. Captain Parmar Manoranjan Srivastava and Captain Kakkad. I think they are all here. My colleagues from NCOR, I can't see them, but hopefully they are there, Dr. Mukherjee and others. Welcome to you all. And I'm aware of my position because most of you have been to Antarctic, you know ins and outs of this icy continent. So whatever I speak, I have to be very cautious, and I'm aware of this problem and this so a lot of it, I can say the privilege which has been accorded to me by Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhanji. So with these words, good morning once again to all of you, and I'll share my presentation. Here we go. I have divided my talk in 3 sections.
Sir, may I request you to please put your presentation in the slideshow mode?
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. We can see the presentation now.
Fine. As I was telling you, I have divided my presentation in 3 sections. The first is the background of India's presence in Antarctic, how everything started, how the story of Antarctic as shown started by India. Second is our journey in Antarctic from 1950s to about 2020. And then a little bit of what science we are doing in Antarctic, Arctic, and also in Himalayas. And then I'll come to the policy formulation points. As Admiral Chauhanji has already said, that the Arctic policy is already on the public domain. There are a lot of comments coming up. I've also drawn certain comments, and I'll share those comments to you before I share those comments with the Ministry of External Affairs. So with that, I need not tell you about the significance of the poles in an Indian scenario. And we here say the 3 poles because Himalaya is also one of the poles which we say as the 3rd pole, being the vertical highest place in the world. So these 3 poles, they have got a great significance for India, basically because they store about 75% of the fresh water of the world. They function as lungs of our planet, and they constitute the 2nd largest component of the global climate system. The entire climate system of the world, the universe, is governed by these 3 poles, together with the ocean. So the importance of these poles in the global strategic planning, mineral resources, blue economy is gradually being acknowledged, and that's why we have to give a lot of prominence and strategic importance to these 3 areas. Now, if you see this cartoon over here, you will appreciate that these warm currents, they circulate in the oceans, and when they touch the colder spots, once in the northern part of the Arctic and in the southern part in the Antarctic, they sort of create a thermohaline circulation whereby a meridional overturning takes place. By these words, I mean that whatever dense water lies at the bottom of the ocean, it is churned up, and then the hot water in the upper surfaces of the ocean, it goes down because the cold water is heavier. And because of this churning, the entire new energy is created, the new mass is created and circulated within the ocean, giving rise to the life in the ocean. So what all life we see, the sustainability, the life in the ocean is basically because of these meridional circulation and the overturning within the oceans. This also has a control on our climate system because of the sea surface temperature. The monsoons are governed, and as was said by the Admiral Chauhanji, that the agriculture is basically based on monsoons, and good monsoons means a good economy for India and all those things. So India's journey, when we talk of a couple of nearly 60 years, from 1956 to 2020, and you will appreciate that we have spread ourselves quite nicely, practically in all the different spheres of Antarctic. Whether it was in the northern part, where the Maitri is and Dakshin Gangotri is situated, or in the western part, Weddell Sea, then in the eastern part, Tasman Hills, or in the center of the continent, that is the South Pole. We have our presence all around Antarctic over these 50 to 60 years. It is quite interesting to note that the issue of Antarctic in the United Nations was first raised by India, and India was the first country to raise this issue. And that was raised by our permanent representative in the United Nations, late Ambassador Arthur Lord. And he made two attempts, one in 1956 and the other in 1958, to raise up the issue that the continent of Antarctica should be a common heritage of the mankind or of the humanity. And this phrase became very popular, and subsequently this was picked up by other members of the non-aligned community like Malaysia and others. And they continuously raised this issue for a number of sessions of the United Nations. This issue also came up in 38 and 39 session of the United Nations Assembly, and seeing the pressure or the force of a large members or parties of the United Nations, it was the subject was given to the committee. It is called First Committee of the United Nations General Assembly, and the Secretary General of this assembly was asked to formulate a report on the entire affairs of the Antarctic Treaty System. And this was subsequently put up in the 40th session, and ultimately, because of the lukewarm response of India, because by that time India had taken a lead and India had already joined the Antarctic system in 81, 82, 83. Those years are very crucial. I'll tell you the background history of those years. So because of India's backing down, this proposal also lost its force or the energy in the United Nations, and it went into a passive mode. Now, why India took that about 180 degrees turn is very interesting to note, and most of you must be aware of it. This was also the time when the United Nations Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, was under consideration. It was being discussed, and by 83, the UNCLOS had already been signed. It had already been surfaced, and subsequently, this was also the time when a convention on the CRAMARA, that is the Convention on the Regulation of Antarctic Mineral Resources Activities, it was being deliberated very strongly. That convention was how to take use of the resources that lie in Antarctica. And this was a very contentious issue, and most of the countries were apprehensive that in case Antarctica becomes the property of only few nations, say 7 or 8 nations who have got claims over Antarctic, then possibly the major mankind of the universe will lose these resources. And so India also took active part in this negotiation. Fortunately, this was dropped, this was abandoned in favor of another better convention that is called the Madrid Protocol, wherein it was decided that, okay, no mineral activities will be encouraged in Antarctica. So it was because under these background that India took a plunge in Antarctic, and then as all of you know, that in 81 or so, we launched our first expedition. I just want to refer to 2 papers which have been circulated. One is by the United Nations. It is an assembly resolution adopted by the General Assembly on 9th of December 1992. There are a lot of points in that resolution. I have picked up only 2 points to highlight, and I will read those points. It says, the United Nations urges the Antarctic Treaty consultative parties to establish monitoring and implementation mechanism to ensure compliance with the provisions of the 1991 Madrid Protocol on Environmental Protection. And secondly, welcoming the ban on the prospecting and mining in and around Antarctic for the next 50 years by Antarctic Treaty consultative parties in accordance with the Madrid Protocol, and reiterates its call for ban to be made permanent. Now, these 2 issues have been picked up by the Cornell International Law University, and the writer over there, he comments upon the India's role, and also that this sort of a resolution had given some sort of a authenticity to the Antarctic Treaty. Because Antarctic Treaty is not signed by the United Nations. It's some sort of a document which was brought out by some of the limited countries or the nations, basically 12 countries, who took part in the IGY, International Geophysical Year, in 1957-58. So this sort of the resolution by the United Nations gave a seal of approval to the Antarctic Treaty's activities. Now, I will also fail in my duties if I don't comment upon the first few people who have been in Antarctic. Very few people know that one of the gentlemen from Navy, Lieutenant Ramcharan, he visited Antarctic in 1960. He was one of the first person, but the first person actually was Dr. Giriraj Singh. He is a plant physiologist who went to Antarctic. He worked in the South Pole for about 100 days. And one of the points in the Antarctic is named after him as Sirohi Point. So he has got the credit of being the first Indian to be in the Antarctic, not only in Antarctic, in the South Pole, and work for about 100 days. Lieutenant Ramcharan, he went with a Australian expedition. The leader of the expedition was Philip Law. And as you must be knowing, that there's a station in Antarctic, the Law Station, which was named after this gentleman, a scientist from the Australian Antarctic Division. Lieutenant Ramcharan went as an observer, and he was there from 22nd December 60 to 22nd January 61. And then after 10 years, a meteorologist from PRL, Physical Research Laboratory, ISRO, Dr. Paramjit Singh Sera, he went there with a Russian expedition, and he went around Antarctic because those days the Antarctic was having more than 12 stations governed by USSR, the then USSR. And they used to take a ship and drop cargo and men in the different parts of the stations. So Sera was one of the members of that expedition. So he went around Antarctic, and as he claims, he also spent few days in South Pole. But the regular Indian expeditions, the credit goes to Dr. Qasim, Dr. S.Z. Qasim, who led the first Indian expedition in 1981-82, and then led the history of the Indian expedition to Antarctica. Now, there's one interesting point here is that people say that when India raised this issue of United Nations, the so-called the consultative parties, the 7 parties, and then other 5 parties which were also there, because there were originally 12 nations which were party to this treaty, they were having a lot of I should say, some problem within themselves. There were tensions within them because Argentina, Chile, and UK, they had overlapping claims. So there was not a unity between those countries. But the moment India raised this issue before the United Nations, that Antarctica is a common heritage of the mankind, all these warring factions, they came together. So India gets the credit of putting all these people together, and then it has, in that way, it has a role in getting the Antarctic Treaty signed. Coming to the history of the Dakshin Gangotri, all of you know it was constructed in 1983, and by 85, our 2 wintering teams had been there, and 85 Republic Day was celebrated. In January 1987, you can see the situation of the Dakshin Gangotri. The entire station is submerged, and only the roof part is left. And in between was that 4th expedition when our Admiral Chauhan and others were there. Sangewar, Chauhan, Colonel Bajaj, they were all there. And by 1989, the complete station was submerged, and only the vertical shafts were there from where people could come out. And by 1990, when I was there in the 9th expedition, it was my duty to disband the entire station and take out the materials from them, whatever we could take out from Dakshin Gangotri, and shift to another station, which we called as Maitri. Now, if you go from Dakshin Gangotri towards Maitri, you will get a lot of frozen sea sort of a thing, which we call as ice shelf. And then you can see this is the area of the ice shelf. And if you stand here and look towards south, you get the entire view of the south, going towards South Pole. Now, this is very fascinating to imagine that the entire ice sheet, which covers or envelopes the Antarctica, it comes down towards the coastal regions, and 1 ton of this, it overrides the Shirmakar. Now, Shirmakar is the name of a small hilly mass, which is about 14 kilometer by 3 kilometer in area, and it's a beautiful area, ice-free area, where the Russian station and the Indian station are located. There was a German station also, the East German station, but then it was disbanded in 1991. So this is the place where we have our new station, Maitri. And you can see in our overall situation, the Dakshin Gangotri was here, very close to the ice shelf, and then we had Maitri somewhere in the about 100 kilometers inside of that. 1987, the foundation of Maitri was laid. I had the privilege to be one of the laborers for shifting the sandbags and the iron girdles and other things when this construction was taking place. And since 1987 to the present time, 2020, more than 30 years have taken place. The station has been examined by structural experts like Dr. Raghav and others from Indian Institute of Engineers. They have suggested that the station should be shifted and a new station must be made. We are still in the process of doing refurbishing, and the site has been selected. It's the only question of the finances and when the go-ahead is given by the government. So you can see different stages of the Maitri station over here. Beginning, this is a water system, the pipeline taking water from the lake, Zub Lake. This has been rechristened as Priyadarshini Indira Gandhi Lake. And these are some of the summer huts where the members of the summer expedition, they stay put here, and the wintering people, they get the luxury of staying within the station themselves. In the same year, 1989-90, we also had one expedition to Weddell Sea, led by Dr. V.K. Rana, and our Dr. Mukherjee was one of the members. And as you see, practically 50% of the contingent was drawn from Navy. I have listed all the naval members who were part of this expedition, and you will find that practically it was a 22 or 23 member expedition, out of which 11 were from Navy. This was basically an expedition to judge whether India can launch one of its stations in Weddell Sea, because that area was known for platinum group of minerals, nickel and others, in a mountain which is called a Pensacola Mountain, and this is the area. But this is one of the most difficult areas, and the idea of putting up a station over there was gradually abandoned. Inaccessibility in a station, whether it is in the ice shelf or it is in a interior part of the Antarctica, are very difficult, because if they are in these on the ice shelf, like Dakshin Gangotri, there's a risk that after a couple of years, the station is totally enveloped by ice or snow. And if it is an inland station like Maitri, the logistics become a very big issue, because from the coast of Antarctic, you have to travel, you have to shift your cargo all the way to the inland station, and it requires a lot of manpower, a lot of vehicles, a lot of upkeep of them, and it is really a troublesome operation, which takes most of the time devoted to these operations rather than the science. So India was already on a lookout for a place where we could have a station located very close to the coast, and also because in such a huge continent of size of the Antarctic, 12 million square kilometers, you have only one point of observation, one platform from where the data is being collected. So for such a huge continent, this is not a representative set. So it was thought by the government of India that possibly a couple of more platforms are required to give the weightage to the data. That's how we were called and given a duty in the 23rd expedition to search a new site for a new place for India, where India could have its third station, around the Earth station. So this is how we went around in the eastern coast, right from Dakshin Gangotri Maitri. Over on the left-hand side, you can see this is the site. We went all around the eastern coast. Weddell Sea was already examined, so this position we didn't favor, because this Fleschner ice shelf is very rough, and getting every year here is a big problem. Most of the stations which are located here, they also face problems, like Argentinian station and others, Belgrano and others. So we decided that this is the most favorable location, and why this is most favorable, I'll come slightly later on. But just to give you a glimpse of the area, approach to the Bharti was like this, and this was the promontory which we finally shortlisted for our new site. This is a general map of that area, and you can see there's no ice shelf which is existing over here. This is a picture of winter time, so you see some of the ice over here. But during the summer, this entire fast ice goes away. There's no fast ice over here. So this place becomes very easy for navigation and for the ships to come close. I'll give you a bird's eye view of this area. If you fly over with the helicopters, how you will feel the terrain like. This is an overall view, bird's eye view of the Lasman Hills, located on the eastern side of the Antarctica, where Pritz Bay, Davis Station, Progress Station of Russia, and Davis of Australia are also located. Now this is a picture taken during summer, so you can see the open ocean on the northern side. This was about 1 month cruise, and we had the fortune of locating the site, which was also favored earlier by Australians, but somehow they didn't go for this. They went for Davis, and so this site possibly was left for India. And now geologically, this site is very interesting. You know, if you see the reconstruction of the continents, which was there prior to about 150 million years or so, you find that this is the map of the India on this side, and we have eastern Antarctica over here. This is Pitts Bay, and this is the Napier complex where the Molodozhny station of Russia is located. If you bring these two continents together, which actually were together about 150 million years before, you find that the Mahanadi Graben of India was in line with the Lambert Glacier. So these two fissures, they were joined together. Like Godavari Graben and the Napier complex over here, they were joined here. So this gives us an idea that whatever rock types, whatever mineral deposits we can find over here in this side, because you know that Eastern Ghat Mobile Belt of India is highly rich in mineral deposits. This entire belt of your Odisha and Karnataka and others and Andhra Pradesh, this is highly rich in the metals. I'll try to go to this slide. I don't know if I can do this. If I'm able to do it, you will appreciate the movement of the continents. Yeah, I think it will work. Now see, this is the picture. Can you see it, Satya? Can you see this slide, please?
Yes, we
sir.
can.
You can see, sir. You need to play the video, sir.
Yeah, I'll click. Now this is the picture at present, as you see on the slide on the 0 million years. I'll gradually move to 200 million years. I'll go in the past, and then you will see how these continents moved, and then they were together. Of course, this is not the speed with which the continent moved, but you must imagine the scale of the time. We are talking of millions of years. So about 200 million years back, all these continents were together, and we call them the old Gondwana land assembly. And we are moving from 145 million years, 150 years, 160, till we come to about 200 million years. And then this assembly will be complete, as you see over here. Now, keeping Antarctica at the center of the assembly, you find that India is over here, Australia is over here, South America is here, and Africa is over here. And all these areas are extremely mineral-rich areas. You see, the Australia is known for gold and nickel and platinum mineral deposits. This part of India is already, I've told you, South Africa is mineral-rich, and so is our Southern America. And so the natural conjunction was that in case any mineral belt, because minerals occur in a belt distribution, so in case there's a mineral belt which runs from Australia to South Africa, it has to pass through Antarctica. So that was the basis of the convention, which was there to look after the mineral resources of Antarctica. But good sense prevailed, and then people thought that no, we should not disturb the peace of the continent. So going back to the current situation, see the continent drifted. India moved in the north with a very great speed. In between, a lot of volcanic activities, the eruptions were there. And then we moved towards the north. So this was the Titian Sea, the Great Ocean, and all the sediments which were deposited over here, they were practically compressed and forced to go up and give rise to the mountains, which is Himalaya over here. And this is still subducting below the plate. That's why the Mount Himalaya is still rising, as they say. So this is over now. Let's go continue. So with that thing in the mind, we started looking forward, and we got this site of promontory. We call it as Bharati promontory. So we landed over here. This is the map of the area when the station was not there. We took 2 ships early in the January, and you can see their support ship and another cargo ship. They are going towards the station, and ultimately we had to lay small sort of a wooden planks so that the huge assembly of the plane, this was more than 50 metric ton, and it was feared that such a huge weight, this 1 to 2 feet of thick feet of this sea ice cannot undertake. So this might get drowned into the ocean. So practically this jugaad, it is called in our terminology, the Indian jugaad, was made use of. We spread the planks over here and then drew this crane on its own engine. And in the presence of all the surrounding people, from Australian station Davis and from the Chinese station Tongchong, everybody was watching, and they were apprehensive that this entire thing will go down in the sea. But it took a risk. It was successful, and then it created a history. As you see, the ship is very close, and we could offload the cargo onto the continent and ultimately make the station in just 2 seasons. In just 2 seasons. It's a record for any station in Antarctica which was made of a world-class station in just 2 years. And in 2012, this station was commissioned. And the present state of the station is something like this. I now come to the South Pole, and this is really interesting to note. I have fished out 2 pictures of, one is of Colonel Bajaj and another is of our Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhanji when he was young. I hope he's watching this picture of his. I got it from the expedition report of Dr. Bhattacharya.
I am watching with complete disbelief.
So you can see, and I was really, excited to see because I read the report, and I have also contacted the other people like Sangevar, and they told me the exciting story of starting from Dakshin Gangotri and going towards Shimakar Oasis and then the blizzard on the way. You see, those days we didn't have the GPS. Possibly if we had those communication facilities, this entire expedition would have been launched in 84-85 itself. So possibly we had to wait for the better technologies to come, better vehicles to come. And I'll tell you a short story that it was in 2009, the Secretary to the Government of India, Dr. Shailesh Nayak, visited Antarctic Station, and I was with him. And we showed him this vehicle. This is called Arctic truck over here. Then he said, "What is great about this vehicle?" I said, "Sir, if you give us this vehicle, we'll take you to South Pole." He laughed. He said, "You're joking." I said, "No, sir, you give us the permission and you'll see the result." He said, "Okay, go ahead." This was 2009, and we immediately placed the order with the Arctic truck of Iceland, bought 1 vehicle and 3 vehicles on the rental basis, and we planned the expedition. No extra budget. All the support was taken from the Maitri station. The scientists who were supposed to be in the team of the next expedition, 30th expedition, they were asked to join us. Little bit of planning. I say it is little bit, but it was, of course, not little bit. The logistic people of NCPOR, Dr. Javed Beg and others, they had a lot of work to do. We collected some scientific fields like Dr. Thamban for glaciology, Dr. Ajay Dhar of IIG for geomagnetism, one medical doctor, Dr. Pradeep Malhotra, for giving us the medical cover, and 2 vehicle mechanics, like that, and one expert from GSI who was expert in the GPR, ground penetrating radar, because this terrain is full of crevasses, so we wanted to be sure that nothing happens. So we had a radar running in front of the vehicle, so it could save us from the crevasses. There was only one difficulty, that in case an accident takes place, then what happens? Who will do the search and rescue operation? Because we had no provisions for that built in. We approached the logistic company, LCI, which provides fuel to these stations. And we offered that, okay, we'll help you in the fuel offloading in the South Pole if you give us some sort of a agreement that, okay, if something happens, unlikely, then you will do the things to be done. Removal of the patients, removal of the body, something like that. So they agreed. So with that sort of a background, we planned the expedition, and in just 9 days, we could straightway go to the South Pole station, courtesy a US Antarctic program, landed there and returned that. So within 1 month, this entire expedition was over. The toll was taken by both men and the machine. You can see the men over here. And this is me in the center. And you can see the vehicles. We had number of accidents, the axle breaking, the tires getting off, and things like that. That fuel had to be retrieved from the earlier sites. There were a couple of accidents which took place earlier. So the barrels were left there. So we got hold of those barrels from the companies and we refueled from them so that we didn't have to carry extra load. So that helped us a lot in this expedition. And of course, then we had an audience with the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji. Just a week back, we got the news that the 40th expedition has been launched from Goa. So I thought I'll share with you and complete the picture of the 60 years from 1981 to 2021. So this is the band of the 40 strong people who have been sent during the COVID time to Antarctica via Cape Town, because the helicopters have to be on board at Cape Town. There was a lot of discussion whether the people should go to Cape Town, they will start their journey from there, but then it was very difficult because the people had to be quarantined there. So we thought it is better that the ship comes over here, people get quarantined in their own institutions, and then all that time is saved, and finally, with the safety of the people, the expedition can be launched. Coming to the Arctic, now this is much younger sort of a history of the expeditions. In 2007, it was launched. Launching was done by the then Minister Kapil Sibal, and Dr. Weddell was the secretary in the Ministry of Earth Sciences. At that time, it was Ministry of Ocean Development, and this was the first band of the team which went to the Arctic. And you can see these two buildings. This is a summer picture, and this is a winter picture. The station is called Himadri. This is an old school building which was used by the miners. If you know, this area was used for the coal mining. There was a big accident sometimes back, and this activity was stopped, and the entire area was converted into a research village, Ni-Elsinth Research Village. And then the people from 9 different countries, they came, they established their stations. We also got a chance, and we jumped, we took this, and so that is the background history. So why should India be in the Arctic? I have given 4 bullet points. You see, the telecommunication between the Arctic and the summer monsoon is very well established, because it is now known that whatever happens in the Arctic and in the North Antarctic Sea, the Indian summer monsoons are affected. There is a decadal and intra-seasonal relationship on the decadal time scale between these two atmospheric events. The second is that the Himalaya and the Arctic both are in the northern hemisphere, and they offer us opportunities for similar studies, whether it is cryospheric or it is biological or it is even marine oceanographic studies. Then the traditional knowledge of the indigenous tribes which are in Himalaya and which are in the Arctic. There are a number of tribes, you know, more than 400,000 people, they habit the areas of the Arctic Circle. That was also one of the reasons. And then Arctic is growing into an international strategic hotspot more than the Antarctic. Antarctic, you know, the mineral resources cannot be utilized as per the Madrid Protocol. And as the United Nations has also advised that this ban should be kept permanently. So the next resource hot space is only Arctic. The Indian Arctic program, you know, it has a couple of things like long-term monitoring, physical, chemical, biological, biogeochemical aspects, studies of the aerosol, black carbon, mass balance. These are normal studies which we do in Arctic, in Antarctic, everywhere. But the better thing is that in the Arctic, we occupy the station for more than 180 days per year. We compete with all the other people, whether they are from Norway or from China or Korea or Netherlands, Japan, who also maintain a station in the Arctic. So we are at par with them. And in the last about 10 years, India has got the credit of publishing more than 100 scientific papers in leading journals. And that was one of the reasons why we got the membership in the International Arctic Science Committee just in 2010. With 3 years of work, and we could showcase our work in the scientific disciplines, then we got that honor. And I was the first member representing the India in the Council of International Arctic Science Committee. And then it took us just 3 more years to get the observer status. As you all know, in 2013, we submitted the application and we were through as the observer of the Arctic in the Arctic Council, along with some other countries like China and Singapore and others. This cartoon gives you in nutshell our history of the Arctic operations spread over from 1920 to 2020, about 100 years. We have a treaty with Svalbard. You know, Svalbard is the area where our station is located in the Arctic. And this treaty was signed in Paris in 1920. This gives us a right to establish stations, even for the exploitation of the minerals and to do science and also some commercial activities. Then 2007, as you know, we launched our first expedition. In 2008, we established the first station, Himadri. In 2012, we joined the International Arctic Science Council. And in 2013, we were given the observer status. Immediately in the next year, we took a great lead and we deployed a buoy in the Arctic fjord, which is called as Kongsfjord. It is a moored observatory, and I'll give you the details of this, and it gives you a splendid data of the fjords or small inlets of the fresh water which goes into the oceans. And in 2016, we also established one of the atmospheric laboratory in the same village, which gives us the data of the atmospheric processes which are taking place in a high altitude area like Arctic. I have grouped the scientific studies in Arctic and Antarctic because there is some sort of a repetition, and I know most of you will like to just have some glimpse of what activities we are doing. I am not going in detail, but I'll just, in a couple of slides, about 10 or 15 slides, I'll show you what are the different fields we are touching in Arctic and in Antarctic. Himalaya, of course, I have kept separately, and if time permits, I'll take you to Himalayas. Otherwise, I'll confine my studies only to these two poles, Arctic and Antarctic. We are dealing with a project which is multi-institutional, multidisciplinary. Practically all these disciplines in the science we take care of. It is atmosphere, geology, geophysics, geomorphology, geomagnetism, space weather, glaciology, climate of the past, paleoclimate, microbiology, biodiversity, physiology, even the psychology, the wildlife, cold region engineering, and remote sensing and communication. Now, this entire gamut of the disciplines, single person or single institute cannot do. That is why we have a multi-institutional project. Practically, you name the institution, you name the laboratory, and they have been in Antarctic. Whether it is CSIR, it is DRDO, it is Armed Forces, it is Navy, it is Air Force, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, IITs. Everybody has put in their strength to this particular project. That is why we stand where we stand today. Now, coming to the atmospheric laboratories, these two laboratories are from Arctic. This is located at a very high height altitude. It's called Zeppelin station, and this is at a ground level, practically at the sea level. This station is occupied by us only for the atmospheric science things, and this is basically to link up the Indian monsoon with the interdecadal and the long-term scales of the sea surface temperatures. For a tropical country like India, such processes, as it is written here, they assume great significance because of the monsoon being the backbone of our industries. Biological studies are very strong parameter of our activities, whether it is in Arctic or it is in Antarctic, because a lot of genetic information on algae, mosses, lichens is being collected. And over past about 30 to 40 years, we have discovered practically 30 new species which have been discovered by India. And some of them have been even named on the names of like Maitri, on Dr. Kasim, and others. The great thing to know about these microbes is that most of these microbes, whether they are from ice or from soil, they have saccharophilic properties. That means they are cold-loving bacteria. Now, these cold-loving bacteria have got certain constitution matrix or DNA in their DNA, which has got a lot of fermentical values. So some institutions like your Piramal and others, they are trying to utilize these things, these DNA of these molecules, to find out if we can get some new medicines for taking care of things like your blood sugar and BPs and other things like that. And they have got some successes also. Under the intellectual property right, they have already registered some. But since the medicines, they take a lot of time for testing, they are still in the process. But we are on the positive line. I was talking about the moor, the buoy that we have established in the Kongsfjord bay over here. Now this is the Kongs Fjord, which it descends from the glaciers of Arctic and goes and joins the main sea over here. Now, in between these, we have taken a number of traverses, as you can see over here. But these traverses were possible only during summer, and in the winter, this freezes. So a decision was taken that let us establish a
Oliver, can you confirm if the presentation is paused?
Yes, that's right. I think there's some internet issues on.
I think there's some internet issue.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a slight difficulty. There you go, sir. You're back. Sir, we can see your screen. Sir is calling me. Just give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen.
shifting to the UPS. Okay, you can hear me?
You're back, sir.
Okay, fine, thank you.
So you're perfectly
see this?
audible. Yes, sir, you're perfectly
Thank you.
audible and we can see the screen, sir. Maybe you can go a couple of sentences back just so as to not miss anything.
Okay, I think this buoy slide was there when I
Yes.
went off here.
Yes, sir.
So I'm on the right track, no problem. Now this buoy, we established in the fjord, and as you can see from here, it has got sensors at different depths: 25 meters, 30 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, 120 meters, and like that. And there is a upward-looking radar, so it takes up the entire data, ADCP, and it sends us to a satellite. With the result, whether there's a ice or not on the fjord, we get the data on various parameters like CTD, fluorometer, dissolved oxygen, nutrients, turbidity, and all others throughout the season, throughout the year, 24/7, into the entire 1 year data we collect, and then it is circulated and distributed to the entire people of the research facility which are there in the Nielsen. So everybody shares this data, and that is one of the great advantage which has been given to India, because we are now one of the leading marine oceanographer party which is contributing a great deal to the science in the Arctic. Now this slide doesn't move. You are sharing Microsoft.
So you may right click and click next. It might work. Please try, sir.
Okay. Now every time I have to do the same, or I can?
No, sir, it gets stuck sometimes, sir.
Only
Okay.
if you move any of the elements of the presentation around.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Right.
you'll be normal.
Yes, it has come back to the normal. Now, in the geological side, geological and geomagnetic studies, India has got a privilege of covering nearly 20,000 square kilometers. It is actually 19,000 square kilometer, right from 15 degrees longitude to about 4 degrees longitude, this entire stretch of the rocks. And the names are slightly difficult to pronounce, but I can tell it to you: Gruber, Petermann, Humboldt, Conrad, Mullinghoffmann. These are the names of different mountains in the Volta mountain chain, whether it is Orvin Mountain or Mullinghoffmann Mountains. So all these mountain chains we have mapped over last several decades, and these maps have been circulated to the entire community of the international community, those who are working. Also, the geomagnetic data, which is collected by the Indian Institute of Geomagnetism, it has revealed that Maitri has got a very important location because it is ideally suitable for nowcasting geospace weather and the interplanetary weather studies. And this is a continuous data that India is contributing to the world observatories for last about 30 years. Glaciological studies, which we call as Cryosphere Studies, is also one of the leading subjects. And we also drilled some of the ice cores because these ice cores, they are the repository of ancient climatic data. Because when the snowfall was taking place, say about thousands of years back, it used to capture the atmospheric gases, and those gases are resolved within these ice cores. So we take these ice cores, take them to the laboratory in NCPOR and do the studies, and then we find out what was the composition of the gases at that time, what was the temperature, what was the CO2 complex and all that. We also study the movement of the ice sheet. These are the mountains, this is the ice sheet, this is Shimaka, and you can see that this ice sheet is gradually moving towards the sea coast. There's a bifocal direction is there. There's one movement on this direction and another movement in this direction, and the speed in both these is different. We occupy several GPS stations a number of times, and we get the data. In the Arctic, these glaciers have special significance because they are just at the sea level. As compared to the Himalayas, where the mountain glaciers are located at about, say, 15,000 feet or 20,000 feet. When you are in the Arctic, you can see the glaciers and the sea more or less side by side. So that is an excellent example where you can study the glaciers by walking over them without gasping for the ear. So a lot of data we are collecting from these and trying to understand the cryospheric science, the science of the physics which goes behind the glaciers. Some of the slides I have just brought for your general information. This is the polar plateau. This is the ice sheet, Antarctic ice sheet. And after this polar plateau, it is an even ground up to the South Pole. And this area, which is the junction of the polar plateau and the ice sheet, is a location where a lot of meteorites are found. A lot of meteorites get trapped over here. Japan and some other countries, they have located more than thousands of meteorites in these locations. And these grooves, these grooves are made by the retreating glaciers. You can see these grooves over here. So we study these grooves, we plot them, and then we try to find out what was the movement of the glacier, what was the rate, what was the direction. This is one of the sheet of the glacier which was receding, and we have been monitoring this retreat for last 30 years, and we have seen that the retreat is about 7 meters per decade. Now I come back to the main area of interest for most of you, and that is the inputs for the policy formulations. So I have divided it again into 2 parts. One is the Antarctic, another is the Arctic. As rightly said by Admiral Chauhanji, we should have had a common polar policy. But there's a basic difference in these 2 polar regions, the Arctic and Antarctic. Antarctic is governed by already a legal document, which is called the Antarctic Treaty. And over the years, this treaty has been supplemented, improved, and made bigger by the number of decisions, resolutions, etc., which have taken place in several ATCP, Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meetings, which is called as ATCM. Now, these ATCMs, whenever they meet, they take a lot of decisions, and all these decisions put together, the treaty is called as ATS, Antarctic Treaty System. Now, this treaty system has evolved right from 1961 when this treaty came into being. Though it came in 59, but it was adopted in 61. So from 61 to all these years, number of annexures have been added and all that. So it has become a huge document, whereas initially it was considered to be one of the best and the shortest document in the history of the world's legal documents, only 14 articles. So that is a thing that we have to keep in mind. Whereas Arctic has got a different, totally different significance, because most of the Arctic area, it lies under the under the exclusive economic zone of the Arctic states. Very little area is left behind, which is available for the common man, or which can be considered as the area as defined by the UNCLOS. If you know the UNCLOS, or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, it says that beyond the extended continental shelf of a state, here I'll slightly like to discuss again. Now, each state has got its own coastal area. Beyond coastal area, it has got a territorial sea. After territorial sea, it can claim what is called as EEZ, exclusive economic zone of a country, which is around 200 nautical miles from its baseline. And after the EEZ, after the 200 nautical mile, if the country can justify or submit and prove that there's a continuation of its landmass beyond EEZ, then it can claim another 150 nautical miles, which is called as extended continental shelf. So when these Arctic states, because they have got their own EEZ, and most of them also have claimed the extended continental shelf, that means another 150 nautical miles in addition to their 200 nautical miles. So very little of the part is left, and that part which is left is classified as area, AREA area, in the UNCLOS, which is available to the mankind. So coming to the Antarctica, you know the backgrounds. Now it has got 54 signatories. Earlier it was only 12 countries which had come together and joined that, formed that treaty. The main thing of the treaty is that, second bullet, it sets aside the Antarctica as a scientific preserve. It is a continent for peace and science. No military activities, no nuclear blast can be done over here. And there's a freedom of scientific investigations, and it has totally banned any military activities. But the only problem is that while we acknowledge the territorial claims, these claims of 7 countries which are listed over here, whether it is Norway, Australia, France, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, or UK, they don't have a legal establishment, legal standing nahi hai iska kisi ka bhi. We don't have a strong footing on legal grounds which these countries can say, okay, these are our claims. Now, there are many papers or many people from the non-aligned countries in earlier days, they were putting forward this claim that this is a colonial approach, that you go there, you put a flag and you say, this is my territory. This was okay in the times of Columbus or Vasco da Gama, but now when nobody is living in that area, and that the entire continents in the world have become decolonized. So you can't have the same sort of the ruling that this is my area. This continent belongs to the total human mankind. But very cleverly, what these 12 people have said, rather 7 only, because the other five like Japan, USA, Russia, they didn't put up any claim. Now, why they didn't put up any claim is a big mystery. But US and Russia, they have reserved their right to have claim afterwards. They said they are not claiming now, but they have reserved their argument on this issue. So legal status of these claims has been very carefully put in an ambiguity. It has neither been denied nor it has been approved. So it is in a sort of a frozen status. But the problem comes, when these countries like Norway or UK or Australia, they consider that this is their own territory, and by virtue of this claim, they also have a EEZ, and they also claim extended EEZ, extended continental shelf. So there lies the problem. Once you start claiming this territory as your own, you have a EEZ, you have an extended continental shelf, which is much more than their original size of the country itself. So that claim is objected by many people. Practically everybody objects that. And even India has put an objection to the claim of Australia and Norway. So the UNCLOS has got some sort of a clause. They do not consider any claim, any submission which has got a dispute. So because of that dispute, they have not yet considered the claims of Australia and Norway to the Commission. There's a commission which considers all these claims. But the fact remains that these claims are submitted. So it is a very, very difficult situation where you say that the claims are not recognized, they are frozen, but the countries, they put up a claim for the extended continental shelf that, okay, you don't consider, but let it be there. That means we reserve our right to put up a claim. So nobody else can claim. So that is a very serious thing. And as most of you must be knowing, that this treaty, when it was signed earlier, there's a clause in that, clause 12, which gave a sort of a privilege that people can, if they want, they can put up a review after 30 years. So this 61 plus 30, 91, this treaty came for a review, but then it was unanimously decided that it's working very fine, and this treaty should not be disturbed, and it should continue for so long as it is possible. So that was solved. And then the Madrid Protocol, when it was signed, it has given a period of 50 years. Now from 98 to 2048, the period is given, life is given about 50 years. That again, now there's a clause that in case any country wants, any state party wants, then it can ask for a review. So till 2048, we are quite sure that nothing is going to happen. But what happens after 48 is a big question, and that's why people are slightly worried about it. There are definitely a lot of advantages of the treaty, and as you can see there, it has allowed the continent to remain an area of peace, even during the time of the Cold Wars, when there was a very lot of differences between US and the USSR. Even in that time, all these treaties were being signed. So it has continued to remain an island of peace and stability without involving any discordance. And a lot of areas, more than 90 such areas, have been reserved as ASMA and ASPA. ASMA is Antarctic Specially Managed Areas, and ASPA is Antarctic Specially Protected Areas. So more than 90 areas of special significance, whether it is biodiversity or glaciological or some other historical significance, those areas have been kept as protected areas, and a legacy is being maintained. So that is a very big thing. And scientific achievements, all of you know, discovery of ozone hole, marine biodiversity, monitoring of cryosphere, limiting of non-native species, etc., which would not have been possible if this treaty was not there. The concerns which are now gradually emerging are basically of a few significant points which I have tried to list it over here. The foremost is that, and our policy, it will depend upon these issues. That's why I'm trying to highlight these issues, because subsequently, when we discuss what should be the policy inputs for Antarctic, possibly these points will serve as a basic, food chain for that. Territorial claims on land and on the extended continental shelf remains frozen but not abolished. So there's in the back of our mind, this fear is always there, that there are 7 countries, 7 states which have put up their claim, and they can anytime press for that. Then the Antarctic Treaty System, the institutional development has taken place, but there's a lot of problem in that, because originally there were only 12 members, but now there are 54 members. So in earlier times, the Western countries used to dominate. But after the emergence of other countries, the economic powers of, say, Asian countries and others, now they don't have the dominance. There are many more people who have stood up, and they want the things to move like they want. So there's that sort of a homogeneity in the Antarctic system doesn't prevail any further. Most of you must be knowing that China is becoming very assertive in the Antarctic stations, Antarctic Treaty System. So it has basically become a heterogeneous, and a sort of imbalance has been created in that. That's some sort of a homogeneity which was existing sometimes back in the Antarctic Treaty System, that is no longer there. And some of the leading experts on the Antarctic Treaty System, they say that the entire ATS, or the Antarctic Treaty System, has hollowed. That spirit of the system has gone away. And with every new year, the human imprints are increasing. More and more people are establishing their stations. Now China has got now 5 stations. Russia already, because 1957 onward, they also have more stations. But when the developing countries, they start having more and more stations, then the eyebrows are raised. And the concept that why can't we have something like the International Space Stations, where there's one station and most of the countries, they share those stations. But that concept is not being put to a test over here. Now, there are 3 areas. If you can see the Antarctic Peninsula over here, the East Antarctic Fritz Bay over here, and the Ross Sea area over here. These 3 locations have got maximum number of concentration of the stations. This particular area has got more than 10 stations. This has got 5 to 6 stations. Ross Sea areas again has got a lot of stations, and China is now constructing one more station over here. They have one station in Great Wall over here, Zhongshan over here, Kunlun over here, Tanshan over here, and now the 5th station is coming over here. Then there's a politics of the marine protected areas. The big chunks of the Southern Ocean which surrounds Antarctic, whether it is in the Ross Sea area, it is in the Weddell Sea area, or it is in the Eastern Antarctic, they are being reserved in the name of the marine protected areas, so that no fishing will be allowed there and no free passage of the ships will be there. So this is causing a lot of concern. And when this Ross Sea area was being put as a MPA, there was a lot of opposition from some of the countries for which the fishing is a very big agenda, like Japan, China, and Russia. But now, of course, this was cleared. This Ross Sea is cleared, but two others, the East Antarctic Reserve and the Weddell Sea Reserve, they are still in the discussion, and this will come up in subsequent meetings. Now the question is that what happens in 2048? The treaty provides under Article 12 after the expiration of the treaty in 91. So after 30 years, as I told you, it was already discussed, that was fine. But Madrid Protocol is again due for a review after 50 years. Any country can ask for it. There's a fear that some of the countries will come up because the resources, mineral resources, will go down in the earth, in the solid earth. So people have to fall back on the offshore or in the Antarctic, where some of the resources are very well known, like fuel resources and others. Now, use of the muscle power in the current regime of Antarctic global governance for economical and technological supremacy is already there, and it is well aware that those countries who have recently emerged as the technological superpowers or as the economical superpowers can have some say both in doing a science, cooperative science, and in the grab of that science, they have increased their human presence. And when it comes to the sharing of the continent's wealth, possibly they will put more claim that because of their more investment in that continent, in that science, in that development, they possibly will ask for something more. The rise in the local tourism, shifting geopolitical interest, increasing anthropogenic activities is already there. So these things are in the back of the mind, and people are really worried for that. Some of the policy inputs that I think India should put forward, we don't have any Antarctic policy as such. We have now have drafted a Arctic policy. We'll come to that later on. But for Antarctic, we have no policy. We have no desk in the MEA, like we have a South African desk or we have a Latin American desk. We have no desk which takes care of the Antarctic. It is only the NCPOR which takes a decision with the consultation of Ministry of External Affairs, their treaty division, or with the Ministry of Earth Sciences. But then I think this is high time when the MEA should step in, and they should take the leadership in deciding how Antarctic continent, the policies of Antarctic continent should be governed by India, because NCPR can look after the science. We are basically the scientists. For the policy guideline, some sort of a governance must come from the top echelon of the people, those who know this subject very well. As I said, these are the 4 or 5 bullets which I find they will be having a lot of sense in that. The one was that Antarctica is no longer a policy of exclusiveness of those 12 countries cannot hold water. Now this has become an open for anybody who can join this club. Even Pakistan and Turkey have joined the Antarctic Treaty System now. They will take some time in getting the status of consultative CP, consultative status, but then when most of these countries, from developing countries from Asia, will come forward, then the same sort of structure will not hold good. What India should do is, I think India should continue to refuse recognition of territorial claims on Antarctica and consequently on the extended continental shelf, and uphold age-old its commitment that the continent of science and peace and the common heritage of mankind, it should stick to that principle. When we say that it is a common heritage of mankind, we don't say that we will not do science in Antarctica. If you have got the capabilities, you go and you do science for the public. You preserve the Antarctic continent for the mankind. You can do that if you have got the capability. But then let this continent be used for the mankind, not only for the specific 7 or specific 12. Participate in more rigorous science-based reporting processes to take place, to take the leadership, because science is the currency in Antarctic. If you want to take leadership, possibly we have to do active science, rigorous science, take part in the ATCM, Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings very forcefully and speak up. Because we, by sending 2-member team or 3-member team in a huge conference where there are separate sessions going on, whether it is CEP, it is legal, it is the environment, in one time in the ATCM, there are 5 or 6 sessions going simultaneously. There's a legal and institutional group, there's a committee on environmental protection, there's a environmental protection group, and there's a tourism group. Several groups are there. But if we send only 2 people, then at several places our flag is not represented. Our flag goes unrepresented. Nobody sits on the side of the flag. So that is a very bad situation. We must send proper people, knowledgeable people, and in good number. We must also support both on the human resources side and from the financial resources side. These advisory bodies such as Committee on Environmental Protection, CEMLR, SCAR, these are all apolitical bodies which do not have any political lineages, but they have a lot of influence on the ATCM. I think this is high time we should start giving a lot of privileges to these people, these committees, and support them. We must also harmonize our policies with the like-minded CPs. See, sometimes back, when the influence of the Western countries was felt that there's too much, then the Asian countries came together, and we formed an Asian Polar for Polar Sciences, AFOPS. We had China, Malaysia, Korea, Japan, and India. And I had the privilege of chairing that session for 2 years. It is on a rotational basis. And that platform gave us an opportunity to raise the issues from the Asian point of view, because each continent has got its own, approach. So that sort of a approach we should do, and we should also, from the Western countries or from Latin American countries like Brazil and others, Argentina, those who talk on the same language, we should try to get their support, and we should try to raise certain issues which have got common interest for both the countries. Tourism, it's a big issue, but why India should not support tourism, I don't understand. The Indian tourists, they go to Argentina, and from Argentina, they go to Antarctica. Whereas we have our own gateway. Why can't Indian people go from Goa? Tourism is a big industry. And all those tourist ships or tourists who go to Antarctica, they are governed by certain rules. IATO, International Association of Antarctic Tourist Operator. Anybody going to Antarctica as a tourist has to follow those guidelines. So once people from America, from UK, from China, from Japan, all other countries are going, and it's become a flourishing industry for them, I think we are unnecessarily putting a lot of curbs on our industries. We should encourage our industries, tourism, even fishing, we should encourage, because there's a quota which CEMLR gives to India, to all the countries. There's a specific quota you are given, you can go and harvest that particular quota. We have not been using that quota for all these years. The most thing, the eye-catching thing is that we don't owe an ice class research vessel. Now, if you are going to be a leading country in Antarctic and you don't have an ice class research vessel of your own, possibly it can be correlated that you are a very rich man, but you still live in a rented accommodation, where the landlord can anytime ask you to get out. And now that we have got a bipolar agenda, the same ship can be used in Arctic and in Antarctic, because the times are different. When we are active in Antarctic and the summer, we can't go into the Arctic because it is a night period over here. But when we come to the Arctic, when the Antarctica is icebound, we can always come to the Arctic and do our research. All those countries who are actively in both the regions, Arctic and Antarctic, they owe their own research vessels, like Germany, Korea, UK. China has got more than 2 ice class vessels. So I think this is high time that India should go for a ice class vessel. And we are toying with this idea for the last 10 years, 15 years. When I headed the institution, we moved the proposal. But since then, since 2010, we are still in the process of, I don't want to say more, but we are still in the process of acquiring that ship. So we should take a positive attitude, and we should just go for it. Any delay in these matters, it keeps on giving the high acceleration to the prices. So we have to take a positive attitude sometimes, and we should also encourage think tanks, because it is not the institutions and the government bodies only who can think about Antarctic. There are several independent people. We have Geography and U, we have Saga, we have some think tanks who can think independently about Antarctic and Arctic, what people should do in these areas. And somebody must be having good ideas. For example, social sciences. We hardly give any importance to the social sciences, realizing that these social sciences, they attain very good and very high priority in the areas such as Arctic. In Antarctic, of course, it is not there because there is no permanent habitation in Antarctic. But in other areas where people do live, where community living is there, the social sciences should get a topmost priority. But we have nobody looking on those aspects. So that was about Antarctic, and I think I still have some time. Satyam, can you tell me how much time I have?
So please go on, sir. We'll extend the lecture by 20-25 minutes, sir. So you may take maybe 5 more minutes, sir.
Okay.
Sir.
Now coming to the inputs for policy documentation for the Arctic. Now this is more important because Arctic has got a totally different geopolitical scenario as compared to Antarctic. It involves states. It involves active politics. It involves mineral wealth. It involves sea wealth and things like that. So it has become an international hotspot. Why? I have listed some of the bullet points over here. Because of emergence of the new navigational routes, all of you know that Northwest Passage, Northeast Passage, North-South passages. Now 3 passages are coming up in the Arctic Sea because it is feared that by 2030 or at the most by 2040, the Arctic Ocean will become ice-free. At least the multi-year ice will not be there. The seasonal one-year ice will be there, but it can be easily navigated by the normal ships, ice-class ships. You don't require very strong A-class ships to cut through those multi-year ices. Arctic is known for its strategic non-living and living resources. 20% of the global oil and gas reserves Arctic has. It is very rich in the fisheries. You know, most of the fisheries which is sold in the or distributed in the worldwide, it comes from the Arctic areas like Canada and other areas. And strategic minerals like zinc in Alaska, gold in Canada, iron in Sweden, nickel in Russia, these all reserves are known and people are mining these reserves. On the geopolitical side, Arctic is now an area of successful international cooperation. You must be knowing that a lot of treaties have taken place between Norway and Russia on the Barents Sea, Russia and China on their data fiber optics, Finland, Estonia, along with Norway and Russia, they are planning to have a rail link to supplement these sea links. And many new countries like Estonia, your Ireland, even the European Union, they have applied for the membership for the observer status. And last time the European Union was not given the status, but it has got a more dominant and more forceful policy, Arctic policy than many other countries. Now, if you go back to the social media and you see, European Union has got an ambassador for the Arctic. And in the recent interviews in the Arctic Circle, which is headed by the past president of Iceland, he has been convening the sessions of different Arctic states and non-Arctic states. And recently there was a lecture by the European Union ambassador. And she spoke about several things which are much more prominently displayed rather than by even the Arctic countries. Estonia was on the line last week, and the president of the Estonia was there, and she gave a very beautiful account of what Estonia can do. She even compared Estonia with the definition that when you say the near Arctic states. Now, when you see the Estonia or Ireland or UK, they are much more closer to Arctic than China. China says it is a near Arctic state. It's a new term that it has created. But there are many people, those who don't like that term. There are very close countries which are there and they still are not even getting the observer status. And these countries like Estonia and Ireland are some of those countries. We have also missed a number of opportunities in the Arctic. For example, the non-Arctic countries like China, Japan, Germany, South Korea, UK, I said they are having their own oceanographic vessels. We don't have one. India also missed an opportunity of Mosaic expedition. You know, this was one of the biggest expedition in the history of the Arctic. There, I think more than 10 icebreakers took part, led by the German Alfred Wegener Institute's icebreaker Polar Stern. It was as a lead ship. They stayed in the Arctic Circle for 100 days. More than 20 countries participated. They have got the wealth of data for spread over 1 year, and also from the North Pole, and that also during the winters. But India missed that opportunity. Why? I do not know. New navigational routes, as you see from here, we have a directly route which can take on the eastern side, on the western side, and on the northern side. And this has been already talked about, so you know about this. Arctic face is very rapidly changing. See, some of the activities that I have listed from the media and from the social circle and also from the Arctic policies of the nations, I have tried to put it together. The Arctic activities are gaining economic grounds more rapidly than in the last 10 years or 20 years. The global transport corridor by the Northern Sea route is taking shape because it will become 40% more economical than the route from the Suez Canal. The underwater polar fiber line, which is being laid out over here, you can see in this figure, between the connecting the Europe and the Russia and the Arctic Circle all along this route, is a very big line, more than 10,500 kilometers of fiber optic, in which China is taking the lead, and I think most of the data sharing has already started. There are also two major projects which are called LNG, liquid nitrogen and liquid gas, Project 1 and Project 2, liquid natural gas pipelines. Now, this also extends for more than 3,000 kilometers, and the first phase of this project is already through. Because the Siberia is full of natural gas, China is still using the coal. So most of the Chinese coal is being replaced by this natural gas, which will be piped from the Siberian lands to the China. So a lot of economical cooperation between the Arctic states, China, and non-Arctic states reverse, between Russia and the non-Arctic state like China, they are taking place. So, and we are still on the peripheries. Our policy does say that we will do something, but they have already done. So there is a difference between what you postulate to do and what people have already done. So this is the Silk Route that China is trying to link with the Belt and Road Institute, road proposal of theirs, and the Yamal Peninsula of the Soviet Union. You know, there's a pipeline running, as I said, and it is connecting most of the places all along the eastern coast. And this Yamal has become a very huge source of, active port, which is supplying gas to China. Now, what should be the guiding factors for the Arctic policy for the observer state? For the Arctic Council state, it's a very well known. They have got their own foreign ministers, committees, and all those who decide what they should do. For the Arctic observers, there is a guideline which Arctic Council gives line. Already has published, major crucial role of the observers can be put up in these two bullets. One is they should provide the information in the gap areas and contribute their expertise on a variety of themes, which is their expertise. And what are those main areas which the Arctic nations are looking forward is the sustainable development, protection of the Arctic environment, and the well-being of the indigenous people. Now, these three things, they hold topmost and echelon in the policies of the Arctic states: sustainable development, protection of the Arctic environment, and well-being of the indigenous people. Bringing the financial resources for running the activities of the working group that constitute the operating arms of the Arctic Council. Arctic Council is a council which is run basically by the working groups, and anybody can join these working groups. And non-Arctic states have been brought inside only because they have their own expertise. They have finances, so they can pump in the finances, they can pump the their expertise, and then they can work for the sustainable development of the Arctic. So this should be the guiding principle for the observers. And fortunately, there was a report submitted by the India in the Arctic Council. Every observer has to submit a report. India also submitted a report in 2016. And that report is, in fact, a prelude to its Arctic policy. If you go through these 5 bullets, you will find that our Arctic policy has been built on these fundamental aspects. What India told the Arctic Council that we have already done from 2013 to 2016. Like polar scientific research is a national priority. We are doing much in the Arctic science. India has both political willingness as well as financial capability of supporting the Arctic Council. India has also stated that it is ready to and willing to work and collaborate closely with all the member states of the Arctic Council, the permanent participants and the observer, to effectively contribute. And then we have also said that capacity building we can play an active part in the capacity building, not only for the Arctic state people, but also for the others, for our own country. And we are investing in the icebreaker, keeping in mind our planned activities in 2 polar regions. So this was basically what India said. And I think if you see the draft policy, it is basically built on these assumptions only. So what policy inputs I have suggested is, I have done it in a way, I have tried to take the fundamental points from the Arctic policy, Arctic draft policy, where there is a need to rethink. And then I have suggested what is slightly possible to rethink on those lines. The background is that India is now among a select band of nations that have multiple functioning research stations in polar regions. There are very few countries which have got that bipolar capacity. India launches regular oceanographic expeditions to frozen southern oceans. See, we are a tropical country. We have a station in North Pole, Arctic. We have a station in Antarctic. We have a floating station in our in the virtue of having the ships, 2 or 3 ships which always are working in the Indian Ocean side, and we have a station in the Himalayas. Recently, Himanch was established on the Himalayas. So it's a rare country which has got stations in all the different poles in the oceans. So we must try to capitalize on this point. There are risks of political, economic, and cultural instability as consequences of changes in the environmental conditions of Arctic is rapidly taking place. Recently, in a webinar, it came very clear that what is happening in the Arctic Ocean is not totally understood, because with melting of the ice, new equations are being generated every time. New biogeochemical complications are being created, and we do not have sufficient observational platforms to collect that data to know what is happening. So the need of the hour is that we must increase the operational platforms, data collecting platforms, collect more data, give those data and share that data with the Arctic nations so that we can prove that yes, we have capability. Merely saying that we have capability but not doing it, not sharing it, doesn't hold much ice. India should speed up cooperation in the international studies to protect and preserve Arctic environment, and India's private entrepreneurship must be encouraged to take part in all these activities like other countries are doing. Now, coming to the policy of the draft policy, very shortly, very in a small this thing, I'll try to discuss it. It has been said that it is a very exhaustive policy running for 21 pages. Now, if you see the policy of the European Council, or if you see European Union or see some other countries, it's very short and crisp. And they don't say that they will do this. They say what they have done, how they can help in doing. They give you the positive proof of doing. Now, there are 6 bullets which are given in the mission statement. They are given on the right-hand side. You can see those 6 bullets. Ideally, these 6 bullets should have been taken from the Arctic Council's guidelines. And they should have affirmed that, yes, we affirm to all those guidelines. These 6 bullets on the Arctic mission do not cover the protection of the Arctic environment and its ecosystem, number 1, and the societal obligation, number 2. Now, these points, 2 points, are very well covered in the text, in the document which is there, in the 21 pages document, it is there. But as you know, most of the people, they will just see mission statement, that what is their main thing is there. So these 2 points, which are very important, they do not find the importance that should have been given to them. Mention may also be made about India's commitment to work towards peace and sustainable development of the Arctic region. So this is also a very important point, and I think somewhere I will suggest it to the, because it is open for giving the suggestion, I will tell them that somewhere these 2 points should also be clubbed in the mission statement so that people are aware that this is a key point in our mission. Now, in the para 1.1 and the point number 8, we say that Arctic research will be scientific community melting rates of the pole, the Himalayan glaciers, which are endowed with the largest freshwater. That means they are trying to say that the melting rate of the Himalayan glaciers, they will get a clue from the Arctic glaciers, which is scientifically not correct. This statement is scientifically not correct. By studying the Arctic glaciers, you can understand the physics of the glaciers, physics of the cryosphere. But melting rate of the glaciers of Himalaya, it cannot be deduced by studying the melting rate of Arctic glaciers. So I think this statement needs a correction, and we should do that. India should also make aggressive drives to establish one-to-one relationship with Arctic states. We have very good relation with some of the countries like Norway. Most of our activities, scientific activities, they are in line and in cooperation with Norway, with Sweden, with Canada. All our Arctic activities, science activities at least, are in line with them. We have got a lot of projects in local collaboration with them. So I think with taking the science as the currency, as is very frequently used this phrase, we should try to get hold of these countries and try to negotiate other areas where India can also put in their support to their expertise. There's one more issue. It is basically a conflicting statement. We say in para 5, uphold international laws, particularly UNCLOS, including the rights and freedom contained therein, and support common heritage of mankind in the deep seabed areas in the Arctic. That means when you say the human presence or common heritage of mankind, you are talking of deep seabed areas in Arctic. You are not talking of the entire Arctic Ocean. That is fine. But in the concluding remark, you say under para 7.0, India regards the Arctic as a common heritage of mankind. Now, this is a very controversial statement. The Arctic is, people will object. The entire Arctic cannot be taken as a common heritage of mankind. It is only the area in the sense of the UNCLOS. As I said in the previous statements, area has got a particular definition in the UNCLOS. The area means which is not under sovereign control of anybody. So only the area of the mankind, common area of the mankind, can be limited to the area, and this point should be clarified to avoid any controversy. Recently, there was a paper by the Norwegian director of the research institute. His name is Jan Gunnar Winther, on how the integrated ocean management in the ocean economy should take place. And it's a very good article published in Nature, which is a highly ranked, the topmost scientific journal. He has given 6 bullet points how the ocean should be integratedly managed for the benefit of the mankind. I think that paper is available for everybody, and we should try to take advantage of that paper and look into that. I would like to ask Vice Admiral, should I touch Himalaya or I can leave it?
I think I will have to call you one more time because we don't have enough time left for the Himalayas. So at the cost of abandoning the third pole and the one which is closest to us, perhaps I'll request you to then take on some questions because the chat box seems to be filling up quite extensively.
Okay, fine. I was aware of this problem. That's why I kept Himalaya in the last. So I am ready to take the questions. No problem.
Right, Satyam?
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Ravindra, would you like to unshare your presentation so that?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's unfortunate that we are unable to cover. And I know, I speak for everyone. A topic like this would require at least a day, if not a week, to delve into deeper. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out and speaking for such a long time without any break. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a few announcements. We have extended the program by half an hour, so we will now end at 17:30. So we have 15 to 20 minutes more with us. We'll quickly take a few questions. But prior to that, may I just request all of you to kindly switch on your camera for 30 seconds so that we can quickly take the photograph of the event, and then we'll move to the question answer session for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, you need not switch on your mics. All we require is the visuals. And please request you to put up a smile so that it makes for a good photograph. Thank you so much. I'll maybe wait for 5 more seconds so that. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your cooperation. And I know a topic like this would generate a lot of interest, and I hope and I request that you don't mind sitting for maybe 10-15 more minutes. So
Satyam, can I have a break for 5 seconds?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
And I will also like to welcome Ajay Saxena ji. He's a principal chief conservator of forest. He was with me in one of the Antarctic expeditions. I find him here, Dr. Ajay Saxena. Just give me 5 seconds.
Sure, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, in the time that Dr. Ravindra comes back, I would like to request you, if we might not get a chance to address all your queries, so you may get back at us. You can write to me or the organization and put your question, and we'll certainly get it across to Dr. Ravindra and help you get the answers.
Mr. Satyam, meanwhile, I take this opportunity to thank you. It was a
Sorry
very
for that.
educative program.
Sorry for that.
Thank you so much, sir. And we really hope that you may be able to join us for our future events also. This is 2021's first eminent person lecture, and we'll be conducting more in future. Now, as Dr. Ravindra is back, sir, with your permission, may I, sir, would you like to say something? I think you were saying something, or should I go ahead and read the question? Some of the questions that have been put in the chat box.
Please go ahead.
So, we have the first question is from Ms. Kanchana. She asked that, could you elaborate on the geopolitical significance of India's observer status? And I would also like to read the second question so that you have maybe a few questions to look. Then we have another question, which is the question is like this: fewer treaties and more soft laws, bilateral or multilateral, that seem to be the way with the Arctic. How do you think this would affect India's relationship with the Arctic Council? So you may answer these two questions. We have another question from Mr. Shastri. It's a very long question, so I would request him at a later stage to ask the question himself. So would you like to address the first couple of questions, sir?
Yeah, I'll go for this question by Ms. Kanchan. Geopolitical significance of India's position as observer, right? See, for being an observer in a place which is far away from your own country in itself is a very prestigious proposition. There are many countries which do not get this sort of an opportunity. Now, for getting in position of the observer, you have to prove certain things. And number one thing is that you should have the scientific capability and proven scientific capability. It's not every country has got scientific capability. You should have a proven scientific capability in the matters of Arctic. And we took practically from 2007 to 2013, nearly 7 years to prove to the world community, to the International Scientific Arctic Committee, that we have done substantial work in the Arctic, whether it is based on the retreat rate of the glaciers, on the near Essen area, or it is the discovery of new species in the fjord of the Kongsfjorden, or establishing a buoy, which nobody did so far in the Kingsford area of the Svalbard area. So that is number one. So once you get that observer status, it enhances your nation's prestige. That is number one. Number two is, for any eventuality that you will go there and you will put up a claim for, or ask your entrepreneurship to go and look for the oil resources or something, you should have some standing in that area. So unless those Arctic states know you that, well, you are doing something for their own people, they will not take you in a very welcome state. So that is the significance of getting a foothold in the Arctic. You should do something for their own people. And that, I think we have done that. So that is our significance of our being an observer, because you can't become a Arctic Council member. That membership is limited only to those 7 or 8 people, those who are countries who are there in the surrounding the Arctic Ocean. So you have, if you want to be in the Arctic, you can be there only as an Arctic observer. So that we have achieved that status. What is the second question, Satyam?
Sir, fewer treaties and softer laws, the ways, India's ways with the Arctic. So it said fewer treaties and more soft laws that seem to be the way with the Arctic. How do you think this would affect India's relationship with the Arctic Council?
See, these treaties which have already taken place between the, say, Russia and China, or Finland and China, or Estonia, Finland and Russia, they are treaties between the sovereign countries. So you can't do anything about that. You can join them if you have financial capabilities. For example, fiber optic treaty which was there, or pipeline treaty was there. You could have joined by investing some money as a seed money, and you could have given and joined that project. But that stage is over now. You are not part of that. You are not part of the Belt and Road policy of the China, because you know there are differences. So once you are not a part of the Belt and Road initiative, so you are also not part of that railway link. You are also not part of that pipeline, which is a joint sort of a treaty only between China and Russia. So these laws are there; they are individual laws. You can sign, you can ink your own treaties with these countries. There's no factor which stops you from doing that. You can enter into some sort of a treaty with Norway for exploitation or for exploration of oil resources in the area of the Arctic Ocean. You can do that. So things like that, where your national interest is met, I think each country is free to enter into any negotiation, any treaty with all these Arctic states, and it can go ahead. We have treaties with Sweden for the Mara in Antarctic. We have treaties with the MOU. I won't call it treaty. It's basically a memorandum of understanding with Norway, Sweden, and Canada on long-term scientific collaboration in Arctic and Antarctic both. We have also scientific collaboration with Russia. So all these treaties are already there, and that helps our status in the observers.
Thank you so much, sir. We also have a question from Mr. Shastri. Although we did not visited the part about Himalayas, so perhaps we may look to address this question at a later stage. However, I would like to read some of the points. So he asked the question as to should India take leadership in creating Himalaya Commission and development to focus on ocean and polar issues. What is India's take on as Australia plan for a huge airport in Antarctica? So maybe these are the questions that you can address via email. There is another question that I would like to pose to you, sir.
No, Satyam, I'd like to answer one question of his out of many on Himalaya, because that is very contemporary issue, and that was contained in my talk also. See, way back about 2012 or 13, the Iceland president came to India. He met the prime minister and the president, and he gave a paper suggesting that India should launch a policy paper on the Himalayan Council on the line of the Arctic Council. The idea was very good, and we all liked it. So from the Ministry of Sciences, a document and something was made and all that. We tried to draw analogy between the Arctic Council and the so-called Himalayan Council. A lot of similarities are there, a lot of good points were there, but ultimately the Niti Aayog made state council. We have an Arctic Council, Himalayan Council in the country, but it is called Himalayan Regional Council, which is headed by the Saraswat ji of Niti Aayog member, and it has got chief secretaries of all the 12 states which have got Himalaya in their territory. So a regional Himalayan Council already exists. An international council doesn't exist. Yes.
So there is another question. Do you think the government of India should resurrect the Department of Ocean Development to focus on ocean and polar issues? Would you like to answer this question, sir?
Yeah, Department of Ocean Development has been rechristened as Ministry of Ocean Sciences, and then it was renamed as Ministry of Earth Sciences. So Department of Ocean Development is another name for Ministry of Earth Sciences, and they are the nodal agency for working on the oceans, international oceans, and working on the polar areas, Arctic, Antarctic, and now Himalayas also. And possibly you know that in the deep Indian Ocean, they have got Ministry of Earth Sciences has got number of projects working on the hydrogen sulfide deposits, chimney deposits. A lot of work is going on. So they are already there as a nodal agency.
Thank you, sir. Maybe we'll take a couple of more questions. In the meanwhile, sir, I would like to invite Admiral Chauhan if he would like to say or put up some views in terms of the presentation, sir.
Yeah, most welcome, most welcome.
No, I thought that thank you very much. I don't want to intrude upon the ability of the audience to ask the questions. I just wanted to, I'm sure, echo everybody's comment that the presentation was absolutely scintillating. And if we had any more sense than we do, we would have allowed for 2 or 3 hours comfortably. But regrettably, we will have to allow for some time for some closing remarks by our chairman. And so if I may just want to echo, as I said, everybody else's view of the excellence of your presentation. I also wanted to emphasize that, one of the areas that you dwelt upon in quite a lot of detail, and that was very good, was policy formulation and the analysis of the current draft Arctic Treaty. I wanted to emphasize the fact that, a statement of policy is basically the articulation of a concept defining your end state. That part is totally, I think, missing. And had that been the start point, then a bulleted segment of what is it that we are, what is it that we have done, hence what is it that we will do, would have been sufficient because a policy is not the same thing as one rambling document explaining where we came, starting from the Svalbard Treaty, and it has meandered. It is a mix between some historical chit chat, which is best held over over a cup of tea, than a policy document. So I think that my own views are somewhat sharp on the subject, and I tend to agree with almost all the points that you made, specifically that the policy should be a short document, and thereafter it can keep being amplified in whatever other formats one needs. So I did want to just add that, and I'll stop here and hand back to Satyam. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Admiral Chauhan. Their points are very well taken. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, with the further questions can be directly emailed to me or the National Maritime Foundation, and we'll relay it to Dr. Ravindra. And now I would turn towards the last segment of the program, where I would request our chairman, Admiral Lamba, to please deliver some words of guidance and closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satyam. I hope I'm clear and audible.
Strength 5, sir.
Dr. Rasik Ravindra, one is thank you very much for a fascinating, in-depth disclose on the two of the three poles, that is the Antarctic and Arctic. I am not going to try to sum up what you have said, but I'll raise a couple of issues. One is the two regions, that is the Antarctic and the Arctic, are two very different from each other. One is Antarctic region is a common heritage of mankind, and the Antarctic Treaty consultative process and the parties to it have a very different role to play than what was there in the Arctic Council. Arctic Council or the Arctic Ocean is more in the news now because of global warming and the receding of the North Pole ice cap, and more passages is coming free and more oceans coming out. But the larger portion of the Arctic Ocean is part of the territorial seas and EEZ and the extended continental shelves of the nations which border the Arctic Ocean. So we have to keep these two distinctions in mind. India is one of the few countries which is part of a select group of nations which has been in the Arctic and the Antarctic for a much longer duration now. These two, all the three poles are a big repository of fresh water on the earth, and they affect the global climate system in a significant way. And as Dr. Ravindra also pointed out, it has a major effect on the Indian monsoon, where the economic well-being of a country is dependent upon. The mute point is that we have to be more robustly involved in these regions with our growing stature in the world, and the role we need to play in international bodies by large. We need to put our foot where our mouth is. We talk too much but do too little, practically. Like, I entirely agree with Dr. Ravindra's case that we must have our own ice-capable polar ships in our part of our fleet, as part of the Ministry of Earth Sciences or part of the Indian Navy, whichever way you want to look at. We need to collaborate more vigorously with like-minded countries, take part in greater scientific research, share data, and as Dr. Ravindran has pointed out, a large number of papers have been published by our teams over the years. I think we need to do this more robustly, and we also need to commit our financial muscle and resources to all the working groups, both as part of the Antarctic Treaty consultative parties and the Arctic Council. So we need to have a more robust role. And I entirely agree with you and with the points which Admiral Chauhan has made about the policy formation regarding the Arctic region. I think We have a long way to go to have a more comprehensive policy published in the public domain, both for the Arctic and the Antarctic region. In the end, I'd like to thank Dr. Ravindran for a very comprehensive presentation. It was knowledgeable for vast majority of us. Thank you very much from the National Maritime Foundation and all the ladies and gentlemen who were able to participate in today's lecture. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Admiral Lamba. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking out time and participating in the first EPL of the 2021 organized by the National Maritime Foundation. NMF, as a maritime think tank, regularly convenes such information sharing platform from time to time and seeks your active participation and support. All the guests are important component of our endeavors, and we seek your participation in our future events as well. Dr. Ravindra expresses his gratitude to you for the wonderful presentation, which I'm sure would be of great use to all our participants, which, by the way, maintained a strength of 80 throughout. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to visit our website for accessing important policy relevant paper being produced by our researchers, and further follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook for regularly receiving updates in respect to our future events. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Wish you all the very best and stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravindra. It was a pleasure, privilege.
My pleasure, sir. My pleasure.